there's that awkward silence after we start recording.
Maybe no one will notice.
If only there was a way to edit that out in post-production.
We should just put a podcast up where no one says anything and just see if anyone notices.
No one would notice us because no one listens to our podcast. So it really, if two podcasters record on the internet but no one listens, do they make a sound?
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah, maybe not. Speaking of tweaking audio in post, that first episode of The Bad Batch, we get Caleb Doom, aka Kanan Jarrus, as he appears on Star Wars Rebels, and for some reason they have the same adult voice actor voice the little kid version, but don't tweak his voice at all, and it just comes out kind of weird and seems.
I haven't seen Rebels, so I wouldn't know. From what I remember, it didn't bother me a ton. But I'm sure if you had recognized his voice from elsewhere, if he was like Owen Wilson or something, it would probably disturb me.
Yeah, it was just like you hear like an adult man's voice coming out of like this little kid, and it's like, guys, this kid looks like he's 13 years old. I don't know if his voice should really be this deep yet. I don't know about this.
Hola, me llamo Jedi.
Me llamo Jedi.
He never comes back.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's one of the recurring themes of this show is sort of like throwing you new characters and like, don't worry, we'll never see them again.
Well, no. They had to run off so that way they can do their own TV show with him.
Oh, that would be hilarious if every single character gets their own spin-off. I mean, that's basically what it feels like with The Mandalorian. What are we getting? We're getting Ahsoka. We're getting Boba Fett. We're getting No. They canceled because Cara Dune was getting her own show, Knights of the Old, or not Knights of the Old Republic, but just like Knights or like some sort of New Republic themed.
She was the one that got fired.
Yeah,
right?
She got fired because she said something mean about Democrats, even though Pablo Pascal said exactly pretty much the same thing, but about Trump a few months before that. But he's fine. It's okay. This is the political situation that we live in these days.
So this is how democracy dies. With thunderous applause. In the words of our beloved Padme.
Yes. But whatever. I mean, it wasn't... You could argue it's gross to, like, compare things to the Nazis, because it kind of is, but, like, also people do it all the time, and so it's kind of... Should she have really been fired from a TV show for saying something on her personal Twitter account like that? I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah. But anyways.
Yeah, moving on from politics, we're here to talk
We're talking about Rika and Hunter and Iku and Teak
and Omega.
The Omega show.
And Crosshair.
I really hope she meets a guy who falls in love with him and calls him Alpha.
Alpha. That might be a little creepy if we had... I mean, technically they say that Boba Fett, they do mention offhandedly that Boba, his clone ID is Alpha, which makes sense.
Oh, you're right, yeah.
But...
So I guess they went through the whole alphabet to get to Omega?
Well, what's funny is they're the only two pure clones. Like, apparently. They're the only two, like, unaltered or whatever.
Because they're not enhanced to be Jurassic Park dinosaurs. I mean, grow quicker.
Yes, exactly. And they can't change their sex or something, except Omega is a female, so...
Like, what? They're clones. They can't, like, open doors or anything.
They're learning.
So I watched, like, 4 episodes yesterday, and today I watched, like, 5 or 6 episodes.
Wow.
So I kind of crammed them all.
So we should probably clarify. Did you watch all of them, or did you just watch the ones?
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. So I only watched the select episodes that you gave me. You sent me Other Paul here sent me a text saying, "Hey, I didn't know if I was gonna have time to watch all of the episodes because I had watched the first episode when it premiered, but I had watched the second episode as well. I forgot that, but then I hadn't watched any, and like we should do a podcast on it. I was like, okay, and well, we came up with the genius idea that what if I just watched like the essential episodes to the season, and then because Other Paul here had already seen all of the episodes. And so that's what I went with. I only watched the episodes that you told me were essential.
Yeah, because spoiler alert for our review, there's quite a few episodes of this show that just are very, very fillery, that really didn't have to be in the show, in my personal opinion. I guess, do you feel like you missed anything? Like, were there any gaping holes when we were watching that you were like, oh, no. Where did that come from? Like,
no, I mean, I didn't watch the episode where Sid was first introduced, but you got the picture of who she was pretty quickly.
Yeah,
like, oh, she's the person they're doing bounty hunter things for. Okay, done.
Yeah.
The episodes that I skipped, some of them actually I wikied like the plots just to see if I missed anything. But like all that to say, like the episodes that were essential to the plot were actually like pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was like the Ryloth episodes were really good. Cad Bane, that was a pretty good episode. I still think he's a guy that totally needs to die, but just someone kill him already. There was a moment where he was pushed out the window and he started falling, and I got really excited. I'm like, oh, he's gonna die, and then he of course he's got little shoe jetpacks.
Why do you want Cad Bane to die so badly? I'm curious.
Just because he was introduced, I forget what season of Clone Wars. The first time you saw him was when he stole the, whatever those things were called.
Was it the first time we saw him was the Holocron, or was it when he takes the Senate? He takes the Senate hostage. I can't remember which one comes first.
I was gonna call it the Horcrux, but that's a different franchise. Harry Potter, for anyone that doesn't know. Yeah, Cad Bane also hops in the Harry Potter universe and just is like that annoying guy in every. He's in Lord of the Rings. He's in Narnia. He's in Game of Thrones.
It's when Loki freed the timeline. Yeah. Now there's.
Yes, and like you see that Cad Bane pop up like Harry Potter, and then Loki walks in. Like, what is happening? Oh my!
Maybe if Cad Bane shows up in Harry Potter, he can just win because guns are just better than anything.
Muggle weapons. But I don't like Cad Bane just because like he was super annoying. Like realistically, when him going up against like a Jedi, like multiple Jedis on multiple occasions, he should not survive. But he does, and just because he's cool and he has like a cowboy hat and he has like a toothpick in his mouth. He's like, ooh.
He's like the best bounty
and his
hunter
voice
in the
is,
galaxy.
Yeah, and like Anakin Skywalker can't like kill him. Like, okay, sure. And anyway, he just keeps showing up, and he's gonna keep getting away just because he looks cool. And it's like, you are not even an essential person to like the Star Wars franchise. Like, Boba Fett, that's like classic Star Wars. You can't, but Boba Fett died. Well, no, he didn't.
No, they brought him back.
Yeah, they brought him back, of course. But he's like he's essential. He's an essential figure. Yes. Cad Bane, like, who are you? You're an animation. Like, just you need to die. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
he's too good, and he gets away with too much.
I love the Clone Wars, but I kind of have this rule of Star Wars because Star Wars canon is kind of messy sometimes. Just like any giant franchise's canon can get honestly pretty messy.
I think it's the most messy
honestly,
that I've seen.
So I'm a Star Trek fan, and I love Star Trek. Star Trek, like, really screws its canon a lot. Like, it's kind of hilarious sometimes how... And part of it, like, was because TOS was a really corny show that was made in the 60s. TOS is the original series for non-Star Trek fans. The first one with Kirk and Spock, whatever. And so, like, it was made in the 60s, and they had a really tight budget, so they were just kind of, like, working with what they had. But that kind of meant that, like, you had some really weird episodes where it's like, oh, what do we got? We got, like, we got a copy of the Constitution. Like, what if we go to this planet and there's, like, a different version of America somehow just existing on this alien planet somehow? What if we did that? It's like, this is pretty strange. But whatever. Like,
was like the first Batman show, right? Was that really kind of corny?
Yeah, the Adam West.
I'm probably insulting all the Batman fanatics out there for not knowing.
The Adam West show, right?
The Adam West show, yeah. Like that was a pretty like light comedic Batman, and all of a sudden you move from that to like the Dark Knight. You're like, whoa, okay, what happened here? But
at least with that, it's like it's like a reboot. You know what I mean? It's like, okay, that's a different version of the reality, as opposed to in Star Trek, where it's like in like the newer Star Trek, like they referenced like, you know, Captain Kirk like is a historical figure and stuff like that. It's like, so wait a second, so how does that line up with what we're seeing now? I think Warp 10 means like 8 different things depending on which episode of Star Trek you happen to be watching. It's like, it's either like you go so fast you go back in time, you like go so fast that you occupy a superposition of all points in the universe simultaneously, like you go like it's like it's not consistent at all.
The ultimate warp 10. The ultimate warp 10 is you get to solve that math problem that you can't figure out in front of you,
right,
from your high school homework.
Well, then there's a different episode where they go warp 13 and they just totally just skip past
that.
It.
Needs to be like a Family Guy version of like Star Trek, like the PETA Enterprise. Like, we're gonna, like I can't figure out this mathematical problem. We're going warp 10 to figure it out. There it is.
If we could just change the time stream. Yeah. Oh well.
Yes.
Anyway, this is now a review of Star Trek as a franchise overall, not the Bad Batch. Bad Batch, Star Wars canon. I was saying that TV show canon, like Star Wars TV canon, I feel like is the B canon. The movies are kind of A canon, as much as I hate to say that, because I really wish the sequels were not canon, which there is a fan theory that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, who are kind of the creative minds that are starting to take over Star Wars, have a secret plan to like retcon the entire sequel trilogy, which, you know, it's like I'm not going to complain about the sequels. Sorry. We're already off track of the Bad Batch. But anyway, they're mostly good. I should say. The first one's mostly good. And then after that, things start to happen. The Last Jedi is like a guilty pleasure for me. But then The Rise of Skywalker is just... It is what it is.
The Rise of Squawker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The return... Because Palpatine never dies. Because no one ever dies in Star Wars.
No one ever dies in Star Wars. Bring him back.
Yeah. Which there's actually, in the final episode of this show, we see Mount Tantus, or at least we're pretty positive it's Mount Tantus, which is the place where they bring the one Kaminoan scientist to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, we just see it's like a mountain. And I'm not sure if that's the same place that they were raiding.
It's like the land version of Camino. That's what it looked like to me.
Yeah. And I'm not sure if it's supposed to be Mount Tantus or not, but that would be a reference to... That'd be a bit of a reference to Heir to the Empire, which...
Mount Tantamount.
It wouldn't surprise me if... Maybe it's just they're setting up for future seasons of The Bad Batch, because they've confirmed there will be a second season of The Bad Batch, because of course there will. And so maybe they're just setting up for that. But it's also possible that facility is going to play a part in later, other shows that are set later, because Mount Tantus is a Imperial cloning facility. That's technically what it is. So that could be something to do with, the whole Palpatine nonsense if they decide to go that route.
It would be cool to see some kind of overarching theme, like story with Star Wars. Like the main episodes, as in the movies, those are like 3 separate arcs almost. But like, you could say 1 through 6 were one arc.
You have the story of it's you sort of have 2 arcs, and it's the story of Anakin and the story of Luke. But it's also, the whole thing is also the story of Anakin, because it's his fall and then being evil and then redemption at the end. But obviously the last 3 are mostly focused on Luke's story.
Yeah, the last three seem to be like a separate thing. Like it would just be nice to see like it's kind of cool how they're starting to make sense and tie together the whole mess that's the Star Wars universe. But it would be nice to see some direction because right now like the Bad Batch, the last episode just kind of ended and you're like, okay,
Yeah.
it didn't really. I'm not really gonna complain about it. I don't think it was a terrible ending. It was just kind of like, well, that definitely was not a cliffhanger. They could literally like go anywhere.
Yeah, it's like another. It feels like a slightly incomplete story to me. Like it feels like there was, and part of it is so the show is not about anything. That's part of the problem. Is I shouldn't say it's not about anything, but the Bad Batch don't really have a convincing or like they don't have an objective that really like grabs you. You know, it's there's not like a mission overall. Like they kind of have like, oh, what's our next job or whatever. But like
you have to eat.
Yeah, exactly. They don't have an overall mission. They're just surviving. And like that's fine, and that's fine for a little while, but it would be nice if they, you know, actually found their purpose at some point during the 16 episodes that we got.
Yeah, that was a lot of episodes of to just kind of be meandering. I think they do have a lead with like joining Rex's cause. Like they're slowly like considering it.
Right.
So that might be eventually a purpose, and of course, I hope that if that happens, there would be like a reason they're doing things as opposed to like, hey, we're gonna do like, you know, like generally good things across the universe and maybe kind of contribute to the rebellion or something, and maybe but like so it'd be nice. Yeah, it'd be nice to have some kind of direction because 16 episodes was a lot. I didn't even watch all of them, so that is a lot to go through. I think some TV shows do it well where they have lots of episodes where they just kind of they're kind of standalone things and they don't contribute to the overall plot. And like there's an episode in Avatar: The Last Airbender like that. I think it's called The Tales of Ba Sing Se, and it's just kind of a nice episode because it just kind of shows you that the creators love the world that they created, and they're just kind of, you know, having a good time in that universe. So I feel like TV shows can do a good job of creating episodes that don't contribute to the whole plot. Like I haven't seen anything of Naruto, but I know there's plenty of, you know, non-essential episodes in that whole franchise, anime. But yeah, I was just like, it really this season of Bad Batch something like a kind of joyride through like Star Wars. Just like, hey, you know, I feel like Star Wars has always been about like it's not been so much about like, you know, amazing story as it's been about like, hey, we want to see like people use laser guns and we want to see spaceships and explosions and like that was kind of the whole idea. Like when Star Wars, like A New Hope, Episode 4, whatever, first came out, it was like people were just so blown away by the effects and the things you could do, and that's what made it a classic. So I feel like something innate to the whole Star Wars universe is just this idea of like, let's just go to space and enjoy, you know, like it's like the idea of clones. It's like people like clones. Everyone loves clones because, you know, they're clones.
Yeah,
Who doesn't love
you
clones?
did have lovable characters in the original trilogy as well, and I think that's a big part of it too, is you had these characters that we could actually sort of get on board with and root for, and I feel like that was a bit lacking in this. The characters felt mostly underdeveloped. Like
that's fair because Luke is a very safe, easy to get behind hero. Like he's a pretty typical hero.
Yep, and then Han is, you know, the cool guy that you're like, that guy's cool. I'm on his side. you know?
Yes. And yeah, this was really kind of like, I felt like they're trying to wrestle with like deep things in this series. Like at the end, with what Crosshair decided to do and the whole revelation behind what was going on there. It's like, you know, it's like, oh, you know, we're trying to find our purpose and we can't help but to be ourselves. Like, well, you have a point, but, you know, it'd be nice if there's a story here.
Yeah, and that was part of why, like, the conflict in the show didn't feel as meaningful because Crosshair, you know, he's like, hey, I'm working for the Empire, and, you know, this is my purpose. But, like, the other Bad Batch members, they're just like, the Empire just doesn't seem good, so we're just not going to work for the Empire. But they don't want to work actively against the Empire either, so they seem just kind of on they just seem kind of adrift is the main problem. Like, it's almost funny that, like, the Empire, and to be clear, it's probably, like, not, like, a big objective, you know, because obviously whenever you see the Empire in Star Wars, you're only seeing a small part of it because it's a huge galaxy-spanning bureaucracy. So it's not
it lasts like 30 years.
Yeah, it's not like the Empire. It's not like the Emperor himself, though, is like, oh, the Bad Batch must be found at all costs.
Yeah.
You know, we don't see Darth Vader. Like, I was actually almost surprised. Like, I figured as many other cameo characters they threw in, I figured by the end we'd see Lord Vader come strolling in to personally destroy Kamino or whatever.
Okay, that's fair.
And I'm kind of glad that we didn't. Because I'm sure he'll show up eventually if this show keeps running for, you know, a while. Like, it would surprise me. Like, there's a good chance he'll show up in season 2, and if he doesn't show up in season 2 and this show gets, you know, 3 or 4 seasons, I'm sure he will appear at some point. But I'm glad that they didn't shoehorn Darth Vader in just to be like, look, it's Darth Vader. You know him.
I feel like this season's strongest... What was most interesting, I feel like what this show really had going for it was just an inside look from the clones' perspective about the Empire and how that all went down. Because that was really the kind of fascinating part from the get-go, I think, is like, you know, we've seen before Order 66 and we've seen after Order 66. We've seen very little about during 66 or immediately after Order 66.
Yeah, that was the cool part of this show, was to explore that sort of unseen time period of Star Wars.
Yeah. So it started out, like, the first episode was like that. It was very interesting because you got to see all that. And then the majority of the season was like not really wrestling too much with those issues or seeing those things. Because you're like, hey, look, the Bad Batch doing fun, cool things about the universe. But the season ended kind of back on the same note it started with. And I kind of like, there were like some hardcore nostalgia vibes those last few episodes. It was almost equivalent to the last season. Okay, it felt very similar to how the Clone Wars season ended, end of season 7, with, like, you know, Ahsoka and Rex and the giant star and the Venator falling from the sky, and all, like, you know, like, it felt like, you know, it's a fun kids show, but all of a sudden it got, like, pretty serious, and, like, oh man, like, no one wants to see clones, like, leave the scene and, like, become bad people and kind of disappear. And then this season concludes, if we're doing spoilers, with Kamino being destroyed, which I didn't know if that was canon already, that Kamino was destroyed by the Empire.
They just kind of got chatter I saw online, like, it seemed like people were not expecting it, so I'm guessing, and this is part of why, again, Star Wars canon being, I divide it into tiers, where you get, like, movie canon is A and TV is B, and then comic books and novels I kind of put as C, but I almost also put as just total nonsense, not canon at all, like, no one cares. Because, like, the TV shows do not care at all, and the same with the movies. They do not care at all about following the books, which is totally fine, like, in my opinion. Like, and I'm sorry if that really bugs a lot of people, but, like, I'm a person who's read quite a few Star Wars books and enjoyed quite a few of them. But, like, tell your own story. Like, I don't need to see, like, the exact recreation of the Thrawn trilogy on screen. Like, I'm good. I read that story, like, and it was cool. But, like, now I don't need to see, like, that exact story play out again. So I'm sure there's a bunch of Star Wars fans that are like, oh, but in the book, Kamino is still around for whatever. And it's like, fine, whatever. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but yeah, Kamino getting destroyed I think that's new canon as of this show. So,
and yeah, that was that I feel like that whole thing was very well done. With, like, there's a shot where you see the main, like, central hub of the city, Kamino, falling down, and that kind of reminded me a lot of the picture of the Venator falling through the sky at the end of season 7 of the Clone Wars. Like, it was almost like it definitely wasn't a perfect parallel, but it really kind of felt the same, like this big hunk of space awesomeness, you know, whether it's a ship or a city, and it's just falling down, burning, being destroyed, like an age gone by. And it was just sad. Like, even, like, the TV show even gave you, like, a few moments to look around at all the empty facilities in Kamino with, like, nostalgic music, and you were like, oof, not ready for that. So that was kind of done well, I think, showing how, you know, this age is done and over with, and it's time to move on to other things. And it's kind of like, that's kind of sad because you kind of really feel with the clones where it's like, what was all of this for anyways? And it's kind of feels very unsatisfying because it's like, well, we're the Empire and like, what are we fighting for? And now it's all just destroyed and now we're not employed.
It's all just for Palpatine's own glory.
Yeah.
And just his seeking of power. That's the whole thing of like, you know, who won the Clone Wars? It's like, the reality is like everyone lost the Clone Wars. Only one person won the Clone Wars. Palpatine won the Clone Wars. Mm-hmm. There was never going to be a winner. It was just always going to be Palpatine, and you know, for his own personal, you know, the Sith desire power above all else. You know, which you could say is a like one-dimensional thing, but also like, I mean, there are obviously a lot of people who have existed in the real world that are pretty much just all about their own power, and they don't really care about like who they have to have disappeared or anything else to accomplish that. So I mean, it's the pursuit of, you know, absolute control is definitely a thing that drives a particular subset of individuals. And so naturally, if you have government on a galactic scale, someone's going to want to control that whole government as well. And the Sith, you know, the Sith just love power. I guess it's just their thing, the desire to be more powerful. So,
yeah. And there are other things with the whole Star Wars universe that I generally don't agree with, like Anakin's character and how he becomes Darth Vader. Like that, honestly, doesn't strike home with me. Like it doesn't. Like Darth Vader and Anakin seem like completely different individuals, and like I don't see how logically one would follow.
They seem like different individuals if you've watched the Clone Wars. Yeah, like if you've seen the prequels only, like he seems so. Part of it is because Anakin is written not the greatest in the prequels, because the prequels overall are not written the most convincingly. You do see obviously like some dark moments for him in the Clone Wars, but yeah, it is. They maybe made Anakin a little too good, and like they should have shown him being good in the Clone Wars, because then at least you like can empathize with him and you can like, it's more tragic. But like maybe they should have made him a little more bad too, so that way you see the conflict within, you know, the character, and be like, oh, there's good to him, but there's also this bad and darkness, and
you didn't even have to make him bad. You just had to show how like unstable he was, because the whole time, like the whole idea of like, I feel like Anakin, I don't know what I'm saying. Anakin, I think I tried to say Aragorn, no, wow, Anakin. That is like a trope of like individual that we see all the time in pop like American culture. It's like this young, on fire dude, super skilled, but like he's kind of a hothead, and he's like the most powerful, but he's kind of a jerk. Like you see that all the time in like a modern like American, I don't know, anything film, and so you didn't really get that in the TV show The Clone Wars. I don't know why we're talking about this right now, but so yeah, I don't know how I got into that tangent.
Well, because it's Star Wars, and Star Wars is just a all-consuming spaghetti of just everything mashing into itself. Yeah. That's, I guess, if I'm gonna offer another critique, but also like something nice about the show, I don't know. It depends on the episode. Is the amount of cameos is hilarious. We have episode 2, we get Cut LaQuaine, who shows up in like 2 episodes of the Clone Wars, I think, and they're consecutive episodes. They're not even like he shows up once and then shows up.
Is that the chick with like the weird haircut?
No, Cut is the he's the deserter clone.
Oh, yep. Okay.
And so he was like the first clone we saw, like that, you know, wasn't all about, he's like, hey, we're basically slaves. Yeah. Like we never had a choice to fight for the Republic. We were just created and told that like this is what we had to do. But yeah, so Cut shows up. That episode felt largely unnecessary to me, if I'm being honest.
2 wasn't unnecessary.
Yeah, like it was just kind of like, oh, you know, Hunter thinks he needs to get rid of Omega because, you know, they can't raise her.
Typical.
And then he realizes they should, but like it just felt very, again, it's like it felt like a kind of unnecessary episode, or maybe you could have done it differently.
Throughout this whole series, Hunter is always the one, like, he says something. Yeah, he's supposed to be, like, the smart guy and the leader, but, like, he says something and everyone's like, no. And then by the end of the episode, he's like, okay.
Yeah.
Like, that happens so many times.
You know, he's a leader because he learns. He knows how to take advice.
I guess so. Sure. There you go.
But I mean, what's cool about that? The good thing about that episode was it shows us like the Empire taking over. I guess because it's like, oh, you all need to get this like ID code, and you can't travel without it. You know, it just kind of shows this totalitarian government. You know, saying, hey, you need this thing, and we need to see it all the time if you want to travel or get a job or whatever. Which I'm not going to comment on things going on in the real world right now. But it was funny. There was a couple of moments in this show that I was like, this is Disney unintentionally being conservative. Because we also have the rescue on... No, Devil's Deal. It's the first episode on Ryloth, and it's like, this is the episode where Disney explains why gun control is bad.
I had that thought. Yep, I had that thought. Deal with the devil. Those episodes were really good, by the way.
Yeah, those were the best episodes, in my opinion.
Okay, funny. Yeah, I think I agree with you. I really like seeing the whole Camino being destroyed, just because, I don't know. I like those episodes, too.
Yeah, those were good.
Funny moment with... the Ryloth episodes is, so those Ryloth people are basically French, like their accents. Yep. At first I was like, is it Arabic or is it French? I'm like, okay, it's definitely French. So I'm like, what if I switch on like the French, like have them be talking in French, just to like, I don't know, kicks and giggles. So I am like, okay, I enjoyed that, and I put it back on English. Well, somehow the TV flipped it back on to French without me doing it, so I don't know what happened. But basically, it was one scene was English, and then the next scene was French. And it was funny because it was when they were in the prison cell. I think this might have been the rescue one, but they're in the prison cell, and the Imperial dude walks up to the prison cell, and he's talking to them through the little red laser prison cell door thingy, and he just starts talking in French. I'm like, wow. I'm like, maybe this is some kind of weird, like maybe he's showing that he can talk their language on Ryloth. Oh. And the people in the cell like talking back to him. And the subtitles are in English, and so I'm like, wow, so the Disney is telling you like okay, that's kind of interesting, but then it keeps going, and I'm like, okay, wait a second. So I go on, I see that with the French, it was translated for French. The voice actors sounded so similar. I was like, oh my gosh,
that's really funny.
I was like, that's kind of really lame that Disney just made them Ryloth people speak French.
Yeah, they like, just like, there's the other alien languages in Star Wars, and they're like, do you think we should make a language for Ryloth? No, just have them talk French. I mean, why would they not? Like, I mean, everyone else talks English, like, so...
They start talking French, and the TVA show up, like, you can't do that.
Yeah, this is unacceptable. Yeah, that's great. I love that.
Because it fit perfectly with the scene. Like, the bad guy is showing that he can get on the level with, like, the good guys. Like, that's right, I know your language. And I was like, wow, okay.
Oh, no.
Like, this sounds legit like French. Yeah, it's French. Because like the English subtitles came up, so I thought like that was like Disney Plus being like, or like the creators of the show being like, hey, this is the alien language. We know you can't understand it, so here's the English. But like, so I just bought it for the first like 10-15 seconds, and then I was like, this is off.
Yeah, those are
my smarts kicked in.
The smarts, they finally showed up.
Wait a second.
Hold on, just a moment. Yeah, those were really good episodes, and ironically, the first one has the Bad Batch in it for about 30 seconds. It is an episode of the Bad Batch which contains almost none of the Bad Batch.
That's a good point.
It felt very much like a Clone Wars episode in that sense, because it's like, it's telling a different story. Like the Clone Wars didn't tell the same character story all the time. It was like, oh, we're gonna see what Mace Windu's up to now, or like it's gonna jump around to different points of view characters, different episodes, and this show was pretty much followed the Bad Batch except for Devil's Deal, which we, like I said, barely see them in like one scene, but
it was good.
Yeah, no, those were really good episodes, and I liked them specifically because it's what I would have liked to have seen more of in the show, maybe, which is like more of exploring what it actually means when the Empire's taking over, and like why is the Empire bad, and because that's the thing in Star Wars where it's like in the original trilogy we didn't really have to like see the Empire being bad. We actually, I mean, we do because they blow up Alderaan, so it's like, oh yeah, these guys are bad. They just killed all those people. But like, we're just kind of told like the rebels are the good guys and the Empire is the bad guys, and this fight's already been going on for a while, and like so we're just jumping into the middle of it, and so we just kind of get that information dumped on us, like rebels good, Empire bad, and it's like cool, yeah, sure, like buy into it, that's fine. But then like, you know, if you're gonna explore more and explore different parts of the universe and expand on it, it's like, well, I guess at this point, yeah, we do kind of have to do a better job showing like, well, why is the Empire like bad? Like, you know, I mean, we like they kill Alderaan eventually, but like, were they always bad? Is Tarkin just like a really bad dude? Like,
yeah, it would be that would have been a fascinating approach to this. Be like, okay, now why? Because the clone, like the Bad Batch themselves, are like, you know, if they're willing to enough, like if it causes Crosshair to split with this team that he's like brothers with, like it must be a pretty significant reason why you are staying with or separating from like the Empire. It would have been fascinating if the whole season was spent on figuring out why the Empire is like bad, because you know we see at times the Republic is kind of oppressive.
Yeah.
And so then so like you can't just show the Empire as being like generally oppressive
because it's the same as what
the
came
Republic
before.
was kind of, but
we see the Republic being corrupt, and we see the Republic like it's the episode of they don't explore this side of it that much, but there's the episode of the Clone Wars. It's actually 4 episodes, like the Darkness on Umbra arc, where it's the clones are invading this planet, and it's basically like Star Wars does Vietnam. It's like a really horrible jungle planet, and they're fighting. Mostly what's like different about that episode is they're not really fighting droids. They're fighting the native living population who are allied with the Separatists, and they're basically fighting like a guerrilla war against the Republic. And so even though like the main focus of the episode isn't really on that, it's on like a different thing that's going on with the clones and the Jedi that's leading them, which it's a good series of episodes, but like that's sort of what's going on in the background is like, well, what happens when, you know, the Republic's fighting these guys that you know, this is the population of a planet that clearly doesn't want to be a part of the Republic. They're willing to like die to not be part of the Republic. Like, it's not like we don't see any battle droids with them. It's not like they're like conscripts being like forced to do this. Like, this is something they appear to be doing like fully of their own free will.
Well,
and
if
also
joining,
this is their planet. Like, this is their...
If they've joined the Separatists.
Yeah, but what I mean is like they're not like, it's not like there's like battle droids standing behind them like forcing them to shoot, you know. It's like these guys are out on patrol on their own, you know, conducting their own operations independently of the droid army, and it's like this is their planet too, like they're defending it. The Republic are the ones invading it, trying to conquer it. So it's like you know, hey, who has the moral high ground here exactly? So and we do see more of that during the Clone Wars. We see different separatist planets where it's like, hey, we just want to be independent. Like, and it's, if we go all the way back to episode 2, you know, we like Chancellor Palpatine's like, oh, I won't let this republic that has stood for 1,000 years be split in 2. And then like he's basically like saying, hey, like if they secede, we're going to war. And it's like, well, you could just let them secede, technically. And then obviously you could be like, well, the Separatists would probably just invade. And like maybe they would, because obviously like Palpatine has a whole plan the whole time.
What?
But like, let's say that, you know, wasn't the case. And, you know, clearly there was all this independence movement happening for a while on these Outer Rim planets. And Palpatine just is kind of taking advantage of it and kindling it. Like,
you know, yeah, probably the most fascinating thing about Star Wars is its politics. I feel like
Yes.
like honestly, Star Wars has that going for it. Like the original, like the episodes, like the Clone Wars.
There's some interesting stuff. Like it can be done poorly, but it can also be done very well at different
So
points.
what if the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch all had this very political kind of like, not like, you know, contemporary politics, but like, you know, political, like we see in the prequels with, you know, different senators, you know, like vying against each other and people having their own plots and agendas. Like that would be kind of interesting. And then the Bad Batch, you know, because at the heart of why the Empire is evil is because it's run by the super evil Sith guy.
Mm-hmm, yes.
So if just like, you know, why was Soviet Russia like bad? Well, if you trace it down to its like the guy leading it and the ideology behind it, like both of those are pretty corrupt. So if the Bad Batch had a similar thing where maybe throughout the seasons they realize like who's behind this Empire thing anyways, and they eventually find maybe you could run into Darth Vader then that way, be like, oh, it's bad because it's run by the Sith guy who's corrupt. And then you can get into the whole like, why are the Jedi and Sith, you know, why did all the Jedi die? Like there's never like any idea like concept of the clones being, hey, so what is this whole Sith Jedi thing going on anyway? Like the vibe you get is just like, hey, let the Jedi do their Jedi things and no one really cares. But like, hold on, let's look into this and like, why are they even fighting like this? That would have been fascinating. That could play into like showing Darth Vader eventually. Of course, that doesn't happen. But another thing is like with Star Wars, like I wasn't super excited about the Bad Batch coming out, just because the whole idea of clones, like people like clones not because of, you know, their clones, but they like the clones because of their armor, because they look cool. And they're like these, you know, these intense like comrades and brothers in arms. And like the Bad Batch was like, they're different than that. They're like these special guys. They got attitudes. Like when people want to see clones, they want to see the white clone troopers, you know. They want to see those guys do things. So it would have been cool if they did a TV show about those. But of course, you have to give the clones some kind of personality if you're going to do a TV show.
They do a little bit in the Clone Wars, but yeah, of course, in the Clone Wars, they also kill off most of the clones that they kind of give personality to by the end of the show.
Except Echo,
and then, which obviously he's in the Bad Batch and doesn't really get much character development this season, unfortunately. And then, like, I guess none of them really get much character development. Like, Hunter and Omega get the most, and even them, it's not that much. But yeah, who do we have? We have Rex, Gregor, that, like, I don't know. I mean, like, we see a few people. It's just most of the clones that we know, we really don't actually get a whole lot of screen time with most of them. Like, you know, Fives is dead. We got a lot with Fives. Jesse's dead. I'm trying to think of, like, who else. Like a lot of the clones that we spend time with in the Clone Wars who get the most screen time are all dead.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is
Is Cody still around?
Cody's still around, but, like, which would be interesting to see him because he's working for the Empire, you'd think. You know, he obviously, as we know from episode 3, just, like, I love the memes of, like, comparing Rex and Cody reacting to Order 66, because it's like Order 66 gets issued and Rex crying, like fighting it with every bone in his body to not shoot Ahsoka, like managing to like get out a few words to give her the hints that she needs to like solve this before he finally, you know, can't do it anymore and starts like shooting at her. Like, and then you have Cody like execute Order 66 and he's just like, shoot him.
Yeah, my opinion of like the clones in general, how they did the Order 66 is pretty lame.
They had to, though. That's the thing. Like,
no, I think they could have done. They did not have to do the chip. I feel like the chip is a cop out. It's like, of course, there's some computer chip. I mean, they did a good job with it. They did. But like what they really could have done is like the whole time, if you know the clones, you think they're on your side, because they're super loyal, and you kind of take that for granted. Like, yeah, they're gonna fight with me because they always fight with me. But like, what if they didn't even need any chip? But the whole time, like they were like super shallow, like soldiers. Like they're just gonna.
I think the
do
problem
whatever they're told.
is,
and and they don't realize that until the order comes around, and then it's this really creepy, eerie. Like,
I think you could.
Oh my gosh, I was
that.
wrong about them.
I think you could have done that, but then I think the problem then gets into like, but what about the clones that we see having like cool relationships?
You couldn't have.
Jedi?
You couldn't have.
You'd have to change.
You couldn't
the
have
Clone
a ton
Wars
of that
show. Like that's the thing.
So that's that would be a huge change, but I think that would be really cool. You could have a few clones that are different, like obviously the Bad Batch.
And you could
there are a few clones that have personalities.
You could have done a thing where I've heard it discussed. I think maybe you even brought it up, or maybe it was somebody else I know. I can't remember. I talk about Star Wars a lot. It's hard for me to remember exactly which conversation.
Pretty sure it was me.
Yeah, I mean, I was you sure. Where you could do it where you have like Anakin. Like part of what's good about him is that most of the other Jedi like that we see are really pretty detached, and that's actually kind of shown as being bad. Like that's part of why the Jedi fall apart at the end of the day, and why they're really not doing their jobs super well anymore. Is they've gotten so like aloof and kind of detached from like everyday problems, like, and they don't really understand regular people anymore because they're all these weird like celibate creeps that live in a temple and like are supposed to have no emotions. And so you could have it be where it's like, well, actually like Anakin and Ahsoka are like some of the only Jedi that actually form like good relationships with, you know, their clone troopers, and then it makes a little more sense because like, well, Anakin falls to the dark side, so the clones don't have to kill him, like,
right.
And then Ahsoka, you could have, you know, you could still have it where, you know, Rex, you know, does the thing where he like doesn't want to kill her, but maybe the other clones that don't have as a direct relationship with her, you know, are like, oh, Rex is a traitor and so is Ahsoka, you know, we got to hunt them down. So you could have still done it. It just would have been like slightly less. You would have had to like do a point of showing that like most of the other Jedi are pretty callous, like, and that their clones are just kind of, you know,
they let them just kind of do their thing and they take them for granted.
Yeah.
Like, and maybe you could have been like, you know, Anakin, you know, maybe at first Rex was kind of shallow, but like that could have even been like a comedic thing, like trying to like be friends with this person and show them what they're capable of, because they probably don't know that they're capable of human interaction because they are humans. Mm-hmm. And so like being shown that and learning like manners and learning like, you know, manners outside of the military, and then just personality, that could have been a fun idea with it. But, you know, it's easier to not do that. So
yeah, the way they did it worked. Like the way they did it in the Clone Wars, you could say it's a bit of a cop out. It's a little cheesy, but they did what they did. What's interesting about the show that they don't explore much, I'm sure they'll explore it more later, but like we have Captain what's his name on Ryloth, the one clone commander, who totally is not acting like any of the other clone troopers are. Like, he's acting kind of, he's not in opposition to the Empire really, but he's kind of like bending the rules and being like, yeah, I don't want to get you guys in trouble. And it's like all the other clones that, you know, their chips activated are just like kind of mindlessly just kind of doing what, you know, they're just good soldiers follow orders, you know.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see like, wait, what's going on with him? Like,
why he gets his own TV? He gets his own TV.
Yeah,
show.
He gets his own TV show too. Yeah. But like that's never elaborated on. We just see him being like, you know, this isn't like right what we're doing, and then a few of his troops are like, yeah. And then they get arrested, and then we just never see them again.
Actually, what was interesting was, so when the clone army was first like ordered in the drive-thru, just kidding, when it was first ordered by that, they were made secretly by that one Jedi. I forget his name. Sifo-Dyas, and he anticipated what was going to happen, so he had that clone army ready. So does that mean like all the first generation clones wouldn't have the chip in them?
No, because really it was actually Palpatine's plan all along. They just kind of used Sifo-Dyas to like.
Oh my gosh! Of course it was his plan.
Yeah, no, Palpatine controls everything. Everything that happens in Star Wars is actually secretly Palpatine, like behind the scenes the entire time, using the Force to like
it's
manipulate
like, you know,
things.
Like Rey kills him, and his last words are, "It is exactly as I have foreseen."
I'll see you in the next trilogy. That's unfortunately probably true. But Palpatine's behind everything. At least they don't explicitly spell out that Anakin was created by Palpatine, but they kind of imply it. Or maybe they imply that it was Palpatine's master, technically, because he's like, oh, he could even influence the midichlorians in such a way to create life.
Oh, I never had put that together. That's interesting.
Yeah, but like at least I don't know. Hopefully that means it's his master. Maybe not Palpatine, but I don't know.
Pull a Star-Lord here and be like, well, I just say I prefer things the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, exactly.
Making people the old-fashioned way.
More fun that way, but yeah, we've talked about this for a while now, but I guess to summarize, the Ryloth stuff is the best because it's got moral complexity to it. You've got Cham, and he kind of understands that the Empire is not great, but they don't seem like that bad, and it's like that tragedy. Like, I love, like, Cham, like, you feel for him because he's this resistance leader that, you know, fought the droids when they occupied Ryloth. You know, we see him in several Clone Wars episodes, and we eventually see him later in Rebels, too. But, like, he's a tragic character because he's been fighting for years, right? And his people were oppressed, and now, like, the Republic liberates them, and the Republic becomes the Empire, and he's like, oh, like, you know, maybe it's okay, like, maybe, you know, the war's over, really, like, I'm sure the Empire will be alright. Like, he wants to believe that the Empire isn't evil, because, like, he doesn't want to fight forever, like, and you don't want to fight forever, but, like, it's this tragic character of, like, oh, I'm sure it'll be alright, but then it's like, no, man, like, I'm sorry. Like, and he just, again, it's like, that's like the tragedy of a lot of what goes on in Star Wars is like, oh, maybe the war's finally over, and it's like, nah, it's not. Like, you have the most horrible war ever, the Clone Wars, that engulfs the galaxy, and then that just gives rise to this horrible, oppressive regime that also engulfs the galaxy for 20 years, and then I guess you technically get, like, a brief period of mostly peace, sort of, before the First Order shows up.
Yeah, you get, like, a week of peace or something.
Yeah, before, like, all the nonsense goes down. But, like, you feel bad for him, and you understand the moral plight of, like, understanding that maybe he shouldn't be going along with the Empire, but, like, he really doesn't want to keep fighting, and then it's like, well, crap. Like, I guess, like, this, I really have no choice. And, you know, then we see him, you know, 15, 20 years later in Rebels, and it's like, yeah, he's still fighting. Like, this poor man has been fighting his entire life because he just wants to be free. But these imperialists keep trying to, you know, claim Ryloth's resources or whatever. So, like, I guess that's why, like, Ryloth works the best for me. But then the Bad Batch, you know, they never really have quite that level of, like, moral dilemma, which I kind of wish they had. I wish there had been more. I wish it maybe had taken them a few episodes to decide to, like, defect from the Empire, so that way...
They kind of forced it into one episode.
Yeah. Like, it would have been nice to see a little more of, like, wait, we're doing what? Like, because they just kind of do one mission where they realize that the Empire wants them to, like, execute a bunch of people, and they immediately leave, and it would have been maybe nice if they had kind of stretched that out a little bit, where they actually they do some missions for the Empire that aren't so just obviously war crimes at first. They're just a little sketch, and maybe they get worse slowly, and they're like, oh, like, this seems a little not great, guys, and then have that slow realization of like, hey, these people, it's not just like, oh, we got to do some policing action so people, accept the new order. Isn't this great? We're bringing order to the galaxy finally after years of war. Like it sudden like slowly goes to like, hey, it just kind of seems like we're now the ones who are occupying, and the only thing that's changed here is that the boot on the citizens' necks is like a different color than the one that was before. It's a clone boot instead of a droid foot. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what I would have liked to have seen more. But overall, I mean, if you just watch the highlights, I'd say episode 1 is good, episode 3 is good, and then episode 6, 7, and 8.
One of the ones you recommended to me, I felt like was still unnecessary. Like, there was something that important that happened at the very end.
Was it?
But
was it the one where they remove all their chips?
No, it was before that.
Okay.
So I don't remember which one it was. But yeah, in general, it starts off. Bad Batch starts off really well, great momentum, good start. But then it quickly just kind of like falls into like meh, and then by the end of the season, it picks up pretty well again. All in all, I thought it was a pretty good show.
Yeah, I'll give it a thumbs up overall for sure. It's just, it would have been nice to have less filler, but it's season 1 of a TV show. I like to give a lot of shows a decent pass on season 1 just because I mean, I understand a lot of shows' first seasons. Look at most of the shows you like. Probably most of them didn't have like the most amazing first season, or the first season was probably not the best.
Yeah.
I can think of most Star Trek and Futurama. Season 1's good, but like definitely gets better. Most shows, the first season, they're still kind of finding their footing. Parks and Rec. There's a lot of shows that first season is a little lackluster, and then eventually they sort of hit their stride. Season 3 or so, and you get some good stuff, and then slowly fade out into horrible drivel that just repeats itself over and over again. Season 32 of The Simpsons coming soon.